Hello everyone, I'm Alana and welcome to my personal channel where I talk about everything other than video games, which clearly I'm a very big fan of, but we need a place to talk about other things. Today we're going to talk about my boxing match, which took place on April 15th. I am not a boxer. I'm not even really an amateur boxer. I guess technically I am, and then I had a boxing match, but it's a stretch. Something that I did for charity as part of Creator Clash. This was Creator Clash 2, where basically a bunch of YouTubers or content creators or Twitch streamers, what have you, all got together to fight each other, to raise money for charity, and to just do something so different to anything any of us have ever done before. And I had a wonderful time. And bearing the lead, I did win my match, which I wasn't expecting going in at all. But it also didn't go at all how I thought it would go. So different. The whole thing I kept saying when going into it was that I didn't care about winning and I didn't think I would win, and I'm not motivated by winning. And that is still true. And that I really have trouble hurting women, and that I knew asthma would be a problem. All of those things are correct. The asthma was a massive problem. It was very difficult to breathe. Hit me about 2 rounds in, which, you know, was happening in training too. So it's not like I didn't know that, but you can't use an asthma puffer during the fight, which sucks. The other thing that I knew was a big problem for me was that I really do have a lot of trouble hitting women specifically. Every girl that I fought, which really was only 3, either didn't want to fight me again, or went and cried, or bled. Men, I was okay fighting, and most of my experience was sparring with men. Which I think is probably why I was like so good at taking punches. It's a thing I got to be very good at, was just that men hit really hard compared to women, obviously, biology. But that I really worked to deal with and failed. The asthma stuff happened, but I dealt with the way I wanted to, which I'll get into. The not being able to hurt her also happened, and I couldn't do it. So let's just get through the journey. So I had probably the most difficult 3 months of my life leading up to this thing. And I've come away from it being like, wow, if I can do this, I can do absolutely anything. It's kind of a sad thing to be proud of, but I really am proud of myself and of everybody else for getting through this. I can't even begin to express to you how challenging this is. Boxing training in general is very hard. Boxing training for a fight is very hard. Having a boxing match where you know thousands of people are watching you, and you have all that adrenaline, and keeping it together at all, as amateurs, I don't even feel like I'm an amateur. Like, I'm so inexperienced that I feel like even that is a stretch. I'm like a fan of making money for charity. Like, that's I don't even feel like I can call myself a boxer. But the fact that anybody who was part of Creator Clash did that, it's just so hard. And I also am the only person who's part of this who work full time. I work 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. which made this even harder. But I also was dealing with all this family stuff. Basically, for the first time in my life, a immediate family member is currently dealing with very aggressive cancer. He has had cancer for 10 years. It's been hard the whole way through, but right now it is especially bad. In fact, my mom came to watch the fight with me, and on the Thursday before the fight was Saturday. On the Thursday, they called and said, hey, she needs to fly home immediately. This is very bad. So we were dealing with that, you know. That Thursday night, I would have loved to have gotten a good night's sleep, but I was on the phone to doctors in Australia, crying my eyes out. It's been extremely challenging. And I think I'm like, man, if I can get through this, I can get through anything. So the road to it was really hard. There's a lot of different facets of it that I've spoken about. I had to gain weight to meet fight weight. My opponent had to lose, I think, 30, 40 pounds. So we met in the middle. She still weighed a bit more than me. I was exactly 165. And that was also really challenging. I had to eat really specific food. I spoke to a nutritionist, and there are some things that I didn't even know about nutrition that I know now. Big one is as I increased cardio, I had to increase carbs to make sure I had enough energy to keep training, because when you're getting closer to the fight, you're training for 3 hours a day. I had to eat, or attempted to eat. I think I mostly did it because, again, I did successfully gain a lot of muscle. 1 gram of protein per pound I weighed every day. So I was trying to eat 165 grams of protein a day. And by that, I don't mean an 165 gram chicken breast. I mean literally macro 165 grams of protein a day. That was really hard. I had to keep the protein to keep the muscle, because the more body fat that I have, the worse my asthma is. So I didn't want to just gain the weight as fat, but then you have to eat carbs to make sure you're fueling all the workouts you're doing. It was all this stuff that I just didn't know beforehand. So that was challenge number 1. Gain a lot of weight. And I did that successfully. And yeah, again, for anyone who's like, you're going to keep the muscle though? The muscle is the weight. Muscle weighs a lot. So I will be losing it because I want to stop eating as much. The second biggest challenge that I had, was asthma, which was a real struggle, but we prepared for it, thankfully. No matter what I did, every attempt that I made, I would get asthma 2-3 rounds in, pretty consistently. Boxing training was always 3 minutes. And usually like 8 rounds, where the actual match is 2 minutes, 5 rounds. But I guess just like when you're sparring and training like that, it's just not as hard. No matter what, it just wasn't as hard. My brain like disappeared during the fight. But what I had to train for where asthma is concerned is making sure I didn't panic. Because as someone who's had asthma my whole life, the minute you can't breathe and your body's trying to shut you down, you panic. So I spent a lot of time trying to make sure I didn't panic when asthma came on from cardio, which it always does, and to prepare for what to do. So what to do in the boxing match is exactly what I did, and I'm really glad that I remembered to do this part of things, which is I have to like stand straight and breathe in and breathe out and wait for her to approach me if I could, to make sure that I was just making sure that I was breathing and not panicking and not letting it get too much worse, basically, because there was definitely a world where I would have been in the same position that I think Jarvis was in, where asthma made me call the fight early. And that was a real struggle, like a lot of practice to make sure that I didn't have to do that. So I'm glad I did that. I was really hoping that the fight wouldn't go 5 rounds, and it did. It went the whole 5, and I really didn't want it to because I knew that by the end I wouldn't be able to breathe, and I couldn't. But at the same time, all the female matches did. It's really uncommon that women get KOs. So very glad I prepared for the worst case scenario. And I think that the whole way through, I also just assumed that she would have way better cardio than me. But I think we tired out at a pretty similar rate, which makes you just feel very lucky. It's a big part of the reason I just thought that she would win, because I just figured that the minute the asthma kicked in, I had to slow down and stop and, work on straight back, chest, that I would just fall apart. So that was struggle number 2, and we did it. Struggle number 3 was punching. Which is such a funny thing to say about boxing, but I don't mean like literally punching. I mean, I just had a lot of trouble hitting women. I did not have anywhere near as much sparring experience as I would think probably everybody else did, because I was only actually able to practice boxing 3-4 days a week at best. I also got COVID at one point leading up to this. So if I started training in January, 2 weeks of that I had the flu, 2 weeks of that I had COVID, no training whatsoever. And then I work full time, so the schedules were really hard, because to spar, you need to also have somebody else with availability. So it was just ridiculously difficult to do. So I did not have anywhere near as much sparring experience as I would have liked to have had. But in January, I was crying when I got punched in the face, just by default. It's just shock, I think. And the whole time I would cry when sparring with the women that I sparred, because it was really often hurting. And so I had spoken to a psychologist about it and was like, how do I make this happen in a way that stops me from feeling empathy? Because I just don't want to like throw the fight when we're in front of all these people trying to do this thing for entertainment. I just don't want to mess up in that way. And what they told me to do is effectively what I did do, which is just think about points. He was like, don't think about hurting her. Just think about every time you throw and land a punch, you get a point. Every time she lands a punch, you lose a point. And so that is what I did. I wasn't focusing on, I went in there with a game plan. I went in being like, okay, my coach was like, you punch very, very hard. We can probably get a KO. He's like, don't tell anybody that. So I'd never shared any of that. And there's no footage of me punching hard on the internet anyway, because we didn't want to like share that part. And he was like, you can punch very hard. He even said to me leading into it, he was like, I know this is going to be hard for you, but remember that sometimes it's the nicer option to end the fight earlier. Basically, he was being like, hit her as hard as you can so it's over in a couple of rounds. So I was like, okay, I will try to just land my hard hooks and just leave it at that. And then the minute that I punched her one time, knew I couldn't do it. I had a nightmare the next day. Of the memory of the fight for me is a lot of, and she did super well. She killed it. Of Mika doing this and backing away from me, which feels awful. It's not a fun thing to see on someone you really like. Of just like, I think it's taken me the last week to stop having that image pop up in my brain every 2 seconds. It's tough. So it went out the window and I defaulted to the points thing, where I was like, punch as many times as I can, land as many punches as I can, and make sure I block. And obviously also focus on the asthma. And so that's what I did. And It was a split decision. I won by 1 point, which is actually wild. Again, I did actually think when we were in round 3 that I had won. I remember saying to my coach, we won, right? Just because I was landing so many long combos and she wasn't punching me as much. But I was also, like, all my form went out the window. Like, when I was like, okay, just punch as many times as you can. That's it, that's all. Just do that. And try not to get hit as many times as you hit. And then that's all my brain did. 1 hook, I think, and I apologized to her afterwards because I felt bad about hitting her hard. It's a lot, dude. Boxing is really hard. So I'm in there and I'm focusing on breathing and I'm focusing on just throwing as many goddamn jabs as I can. And it was really actually really fun to watch Mika because I imagine she had a lot more sparring experience than me and probably a lot more boxing experience than me. And she was doing stuff where I was like, oh, her brain for sure works way better than mine. Like I could just tell. She was like trying to fake me out. She'd like half throw a punch and then pull it back. And I was like, dude, I don't have any strategy in my head. Like nothing. Like I forgot to bend my legs. The 2 things my coach told me to do were stop chasing her, breathe, which I did at the end, and bend your legs. I just forgot to bend my legs. And I think that probably came from me defaulting to try to get the oxygen in my lungs. It's really funny. Like, most boxers forget to block and forget to breathe. That's the thing. They all say when you have your first fight, all your form goes out your window. It's not going to look like any of your sparring practice. You're going to hate the way it looks. And I totally feel that way. But I did forget the 2 things that I was told most people forget, which is blocking. I didn't forget to block. I didn't forget to breathe. I had those 2 down. Everything else, fucking smooth brain, clean, didn't exist in my mind whatsoever. Like I did not have any intelligence at all, which is so important for boxing. And yeah, I put it down to both lack of experience and the need for my brain to really focus on breathing and focus on counting, which is what I was doing. I was counting how many times I was punching her because I was like, it's really my only chance to get through this is just keep throwing jabs. And it was the easiest way for me to not look at it as though I was fighting a friend, as if just doing the math in my head. Like I was literally taking a minus off if she hit me. That's all that was fucking going on. It's so nuts. Everything that I had been taught over the last 3 months, non-existent. She looked so much smarter and so much more aware of what was happening. And like I said, I knew that in her face. I was like, she's fucking fine. And I'm just like, +1, breathe, +2, breathe, -1, like just mentally, wow, garbage. Yeah, very funny. But so yeah, it was not at all what I expected. I'm glad that I had backup options and that I thought about it going into it to know what to do. I'm also glad that I like just because I did spar with men constantly, like that was most of my experience. I am really good at taking a punch, and Mika did not hit me as hard as some of the men that I'd sparred with. The worst punch I got throughout this whole experience was when I sparred with Ethan, which is very friendly, but I kept being like, you're not hurting me. He's not even hurting me. And my coach was like, well, hit her harder then. So Ethan was hitting me harder and harder and harder. And he punched me in the kidney. And I immediately fell to the ground and vomited and cried. And it was like, I wasn't like in that much pain. The crying was not from that. It was just an instant reaction. Like, I think it's shock. Still the worst punch that I had the whole time. So yeah, it's a culmination of like desperate preparation for something that came out, again, not in the way that I expected it to. I've never lost my head to that extent before in my life. Funnily enough, the only 2 people that I could hear in the crowd were Sabrina yelling my name and my coach. And again, even then, I barely remember shit. It's just so weird. Really nothing like it. Like, so much fun though, because I've also had people be like, you know, how do you feel afterwards? How does it feel to get hit that way? I've seen people say like, oh, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. And I was like, no, the being punched in the face was fine. That's fine. I don't care about that at all anymore. I actually like kind of feel like being punched in the face, it's a weird thing to say. It doesn't hurt. It's just shocking. It can hurt you afterwards, like you could be sore the day after, but actually getting a punch in the face from a boxing glove, fine. Like, not a thing that I care about at all anymore. Otherwise, just people being like, oh man, yeah, I can't imagine it's fun. I had a really fun time. It was really, really, really fun. I really enjoyed it. My walkout was obviously God of War inspired. I had Chris Judge record something for me. I walked out with very good friend Jessica Negri and the official Atreus cosplayer Abby, who were both so wonderful and so supportive, and it was so fun to get to do that. My whole costume was designed by a guy called Future. I got my own back, he goes by. I didn't get it until the day before the flight, so I didn't even know what it was going to look like. And, I figured the walkout part would be fun. Crowds don't scare me at all. They're totally fine. I didn't have any issue with being in front of a crowd. And in the ring, the crowd doesn't exist. I think at one point I heard people chanting my name, and I was vaguely aware of it, but not really. And was just looking at Mika and being really impressed by her. Like, as someone that I really like, being like, damn. She really has a head on her. I have no, I'm just fucking counting. Like, I was like, damn, that's sick. She's doing a great job. And there were points where I remember laughing or seeing her laugh. Like, if she hit me really hard, I'd smile, which definitely only happened as I got further into practicing over the last 3 months, where like you get punched by a friend really well and you're like, shit, that was good. And I did that a few times too, that I was like, damn, nice. Or otherwise, I know like in the last round, I told her I loved her. She said it back. And again, I know I apologized the one time that I hit her really hard because I didn't intend to. No part of it was negative at all. It was just so much fun. Just so fun. So I've had a million people ask me if I would do it again. And I'm not sure. I think the way that I was doing this, I would love to have a slightly easier track, right? So like a big example is Thursday nights or Friday mornings in Australia. Thursday nights when my coach does his sparring classes, and I could almost never make those because I was on the phone to Australia or waiting for hospital updates from Australia. And that happened a lot. I was also just really emotionally overwhelmed a lot of the time, like up late, talking to family back home. Just it was very, very, very hard. And so I'm kind of not surprised that while I remembered the things that I needed to and I ultimately won the fight, I never cared about winning. I cared about doing well, right? I cared about like not forgetting all my form, and I forgot all my form. So even if I won based on the points, which again, thank God for the psychologist being like, here's what you got to do. He's a boxing fan, which also helped. But I feel like I would love to do it with more experience to do it better, like to do it properly, like to have more sparring sessions under my belt. On the other hand, I feel like we were very evenly matched. Clearly, we were very evenly matched, right? That's why it was so close. And I expected her to destroy me on cardio, and I feel like I got really lucky there. My asthma is a huge problem. It's a huge problem the whole way through. And if I were to go up against someone who doesn't have that problem, I just think I would almost stand zero chance, right? Like it would almost be not even worth doing. So I'm sort of in two minds of like, I'm definitely going to keep boxing. I've been saying that for ages. There's no way I quit boxing. I love it now. It's so much fun. I love that it's something that you have to be physical and mental about. It's really challenging and also just really, I keep telling everyone should do it. You don't have to hit people in the face or be hit, right? You could just do boxing for cardio fitness. And it really is, you burn tons of calories boxing. Great for you. It uses your whole body. It uses your brain. I'm a big fan of boxing now. They made a fan of me for life. And I'm so grateful to Ian and Anissa for, welcoming me and to the team at Real Good Touring, was Justin specifically for offering me the opportunity, because otherwise I never would have done this. And it's, my whole life is going to be different now, But yeah, my asthma was really hard, and there are alternatives. I could have taken more drugs is really the thing, is I could have taken more drugs to help with the asthma that I opted not to because I have some nasty side effects and because it was only 3 months, right? The asthma's never not going to be there. That's always going to be a problem, but I think I could be better equipped to deal with it. So I'm not going to say no. I had a really, really, really fun time. I really, really enjoyed it. I would love to do it again to do it better, even though I won. It was a win on just throw a punch as many times as can. But I also think if I were fighting a girl, I didn't know I might find it easier to go for power shots, which I was not comfortable doing with Mika. So yeah, that's my recap of my boxing match. There was some really interesting stuff though that I didn't know beforehand either. It was like when we got to the changing room, they came in with a medic and they were like, here's a bunch of rules that you didn't know. If you lose your mouth guard, you're immediately out. And I was like, I didn't bring 2 mouth guards. What the fuck? My mouth guards were molded to my mouth, so they weren't going anywhere, but I didn't know that. It was also like, if you can get knocked down 3 times before we'll call it. They also said, we know you're not boxers, but you are here to box. We're gonna let you get hurt. which they called fights really early the first year. And I was kind of expecting that to happen again. It didn't happen the second time. They definitely let the fights go on a bit longer, I think. And then I had to get my hands professionally wrapped. So like I get there and the day of the fight, you're like eating bananas and dark chocolate. That's what I was eating most of the day. And you get your hands professionally wrapped, but then they tape your gloves on. And you're not allowed to wear your gloves for the fight. My first time wearing them was for that fight, so that you can't tamper with them at all, because the boxing commission takes that really seriously. You get your hands professionally wrapped, which is the first time I'd ever done that. I actually wasn't training with hand wraps at all ever, because we wanted to try and get my wrist to be a little bit stronger because I have wrist problems, which I think worked. My hands didn't hurt at all during the fight. They hurt all the time during sparring. So that happens, and then they tape your gloves on your hands. They tape them on, so you can't move your hands. So thank God I used the bathroom. And then they tape your shoes on, so you don't trip on your laces. Then somebody else has to put your mouth guard in. I had to get my hair done. We used a professional braider, woman who'd been doing it for 20 years, African-American woman who mostly was working on people who would get either dreads or cornrows is what she said. But she did me, Marisha, Mika, and Sabrina. And because I knew I was going with God of War, I just asked for something. I was like, make it look, I don't know, like elvish, Norsey, do whatever you want though. And that took 2 hours. And that was more painful than the fight. The hair pulling was legitimately more painful for the fight. Related to one of the questions that I got was why the braids? It's because when you're boxing and your hair falls in your face, you're screwed. You can't see. And it happens a lot. It's just the most efficient way to actually keep your hair out of your face. If I tie my hair in a ponytail, which I did all the time when sparring, it would fall down. You're also not allowed to wear any headbands or anything like that. I also stupidly didn't wear makeup for the fight. My face is covered in Vaseline, so you look like extremely like, I just looked like bronze and shiny. But I didn't wear any makeup, and the other girls did. I don't think Mika did, but I think all of the others did. And I was like, I should have. My brain didn't think that far ahead. I could have done that. I just figured it would all come off because it's so much sweat, you know? I don't know. And I wasn't expecting to win, so I didn't have a lot of like nerves on my side. I think the only thing that like sparked me to want to win a little bit more than when I entered was my family member in the hospital. Literally the week of the fight, they were like, hey, he's never coming home again. He needs to permanently be in hospital now. You have a matter of weeks. And I knew that he was watching live. And that made me go, okay, if I win, I get to say something to him. That makes a difference. If I win, I get to tell him I love him live in front of however many people. Hundreds of thousands, I don't know. And so that did help me. I needed something to make me think of like, oh, well, I need to do this. I don't care about winning or glory. None of that really exists when you're not real boxers, you know? You're just people doing your best to throw hands. So that definitely meant a lot to me. But yeah, otherwise, like, I've forgotten half of what happened. So in my own head, so focused on the things I was focused on. Yeah, a really wild experience. Thank you so much to everybody who tuned in and watched. It was very, very fun. Like I said, I really enjoyed every second of it. Had such a great time. Very thankful for everybody who helped me, which is a long list of people. Obviously, my coach, Christo, and frankly, all of the people in my life who let me neglect them a lot over the last several months because I was training 3 hours a day. Again, not that much boxing because that was really hard to fit in my schedule. A lot of it was cardio management. Thank you to everybody who watched. The merch is available until the end of this week, so not much longer. So please do check that out. psboxing.com. It will never be available again. I'm going to be donating proceeds to an asthma foundation. And if you'll know me, you'll know I don't do many merch runs. This is my second ever, technically, and will only be available until Friday. Let me know if you have any more questions or if there's any other content around this that you would like me to make. I was just going to make this one video and kind of leave it at that. All right, that is it for me today, everyone. Thank you all for sending so many kind words and words of support through this whole thing. I'm Alanah. I'll see you guys next time. Bye!